Empowerment songs are songs of social significance, and they serve to establish a sense of shared or common ground. They originate from deep within the souls and history of an oppressed people and have primarily relied on oral transmission. In facilitating cohesion and solidarity, it is the associative emotional meaning which truly qualifies these songs. The phenomenological factors which influence the transferal of such meaning can only be explained through a systematic and functional interpretation of their creation and their employment. Empowerment songs employ specific strategies of metaphorical communication, which infer regional quality and which contribute to establishing the unity of meaning. The musico-textual events equally contribute to establishing parallel metaphors and inducing affective states, which are representative of universal concepts. A symbol both rises from and signifies this phenomenon, testifying. The freedom that we have to hold it up until we die. We might better understand the concept of testifying if we first examine the concept of signifying. The origin of the term signifying remains obscure, though many scholars believe that black slaves brought the tradition with them to the New World. However, few scholars, with the exception of Zora Neale Hurston and Henry Louis Gates, have sufficiently explored the concept, which is very often misapplied. The narrative framework of Zora Neale Hurston, one of the greatest writers and anthropologists of the 20th century, provides ample evidence that the strategy was well established within the antebellum South. Hurston's formal innovations displayed the power of folklore as a discourse of resistance in the American South. She transcribed in detail folktales from the antebellum South that encoded lessons about how to resist oppression. Tales such as Old Massa and John utilize signifying in encoding what has been characterized as the hidden transcript, a form of encoded political discourse which makes possible a sharply dissonant political culture among the oppressed. Old Massa couldn't get the best of him. That old John was a case. Then everybody sat up and began to smile. Yes, that was right. Old John, High John could beat the unbeatable. In analyzing the transmission and revision of various signifying figures, Henry Louis Gates relies heavily on the signifying monkey. Gates refers to the definition of signifying as a Negro term in use, if not in origin, which can mean any of a number of things. For Gates, black oral tradition is double-voiced, and signifying is the figure of the double voice. Put in its simplest terms, signifying is a strategy of black figurative language use. Making up a line every day of the week. Every day before the sun go down, that line would kick his tail all through the jungle town. Testifying is the process for musical, textual, social protest. As a concept, testifying also employs the use of figurative language, but within the textual events of song. However, it also employs the use of figurative musical devices. Together, the musical textual events are discernible as metaphorical affirmations and protestations, which are evinced through participatory singing. Although participatory singing represents a purposeful activity, as opposed to formal performance, its value and meaning to individuals is proportionate to their level of actual participation. However, of all the dimensions of aesthetic experience, the dimension of meaning is the least amenable to systematic analysis and empirical verification. Therefore, classifying behavioral phenomena, such as participatory singing, as social actions must be performed with reserve, especially regarding groups. Orientation to the behaviors of others and intended meaning are factors that are empirically difficult to substantiate. Further complications may be presented by the influences of group dynamics and especially imitation. Imitation is a value-laden process and represents a highly circuitous action. For example, in its purest sense, the inherent value which is associated with and communicated by participatory acts of imitation may be highly detached from the initial value of the object which is imitated. A new and somewhat dissimilar value is always a significant probability, one which reflects and highlights only the motivations of the imitator. Consequently, we must account for the formation of a requisite unity of meaning between the imitator and the initial source, if we are to consider testifying as social action within the larger context of organized collective resistance. Moreover, we must account for the transferal of such unity across the demarcation of group membership and participatory levels. Again, as in troping, while the motivation of the imitator remains the most crucial element in this process, the unity of meaning can occur only when both meaning and motivation are synchronized between the initial source, the imitator, and the passive observer. Listening is the only means for experiencing any music, and participatory singing represents only one mode for experiencing metaphorical figurations and inferences. The participatory singer, whether the imitator or the imitated, listens, and might be considered either actively or passively engaged within an activity-focused experience. Active listeners initiate and maintain a conscious focus on the properties of the aesthetic object. In the present case, those properties encompass not only the more immediate performative events, but also the musical textual events, that is, the tonality, patterns, rhythms, melodic construction, and other musical devices. For the active participant, the fulfillment of the experience, that is, the establishment of meaning, greatly relies on creative strategies for redaction and imitation of the initial source. Conversely, the passive listener employs a more sporadic focus level on the performative and musical textual events, or, in many instances, may employ no discernible level of focus at all. For the passive participant, meaning remains evasive. This is not to imply that meaning remains unfulfilled for the passive, but it must arise from the impetus of the musical textual events. Likewise, while physically detached from the various aspects of the performative events, the observer also engages listening as either an active or passive perceptual utility, and meaning also arises primarily from the musical textual events.
Let's take a simple song. We are soldiers in the army. We have to cry, although we have to fight. Some people forgotten those words. But the idea is here that these songs, they say these things. We are soldiers in the army. what do you have going here? You've got two things here. You feel this motion that takes place. Although we have to fight. And then the bass, we have to hold it up. And then just when you do this, you got to do. And then what happens, somebody starts doing this, they start patting the hand. And it just keeps going. And things start happening, and then you have this motion that just keeps moving. And then people start thinking about the words and thinking about them. And more, then you got it. And then what else do you have? You have those people that can harmonize. And then you hear them harmonizing. And then you got those who don't sing very well, and they're singing something, and all of a sudden all of this comes together and everybody's involved. And many of these songs that we sing can be harmonized by anybody.
In many traditions, perceptual habits are more often directed towards these formal aspects. In such instances, verbalization about what music means should not be avoided, but we must insist that all such referential statements be referred back to perceivable components within the work of art itself. Since listening behaviors are habitual, there's little need for listeners to become self-conscious of the various musical factors which embody musical meaning for them. Nevertheless, from a psychological perspective, musical meaning arises only under conditions of self-consciousness. Monroe Beardsley voiced a concern with this problem, and his metacriticism clarifies how aesthetic objects provide an aesthetic character to human experience. It is also relevant to our better understanding of testifying as a process. For Beardsley, aesthetic experience involves focus on a phenomenally objective field. Perception of the field as a stratified design which possesses a certain unity, and an awareness of regional quality. That is, those qualities described by words taken over metaphorically from human context. As a musico-textual process, testifying arises from and out of the twin pillars of abasement and oppression. It is bigeminal, utilizing both its textual and musical aspects for figurative communication, establishing clear and unified regional qualities and inducing affective states. These aspects share a collateral relationship where both the musical events and the textual events parallel each other and result in unified and cohesive figurations. These events figurations subjectively convey that status of abasement or oppression, but moreover assert adversative propositions for overthrowing, changing, or escaping such a status. Textually, they are affirmed by phrases such as, "Let nobody turn me round," "We have to fight," "We have to hold on," or "I'll be buried in my grave." Musically, they are likewise affirmed through the employment of such devices as pentatonicism, elision, vocal improvisations, elaborate calls and responses, descending and ascending disjunctures, the juxtaposition of duple and triple subdivisions of the beat, colorations, and especially the use of sound as a metaphor for proceeding and continuing forward. Testifying facilitates the musical textual expression of protestations regarding conditions of abasement and oppression, which subsequently serve as the very foundation for social action. However, this process need not be stridently pursued, and irony represents a significant component of these figurations. For example, the process often employs an overt omission of textual assertions regarding caustic conditions such as abasement and oppression, and instead establishes figurations which express optimism. The musical events continue to parallel and amplify the textual figurations. However, in such instances, it is this very level of expressed optimism which implies the condition of oppression. The musical textual events facilitate the establishment of shared affective states, that is, figurative affirmations. These figurations infer a shared state of cognition, that is, a unified and conscious focus on universal concepts such as freedom, equality, and justice. This focus, in turn, is centered on a theodicy of personal responsibility and actions. The cohesion of the musical textual events represent a primary metaphor for an established group cohesion and results in the establishment of a requisite level of solidarity and purpose amongst participants. The true value of empowerment songs resides within their effective import, for they are truly aesthetic objects. The true power of testifying resides not only within its ability to facilitate group cohesion and solidarity, but also within its ability to communicate across group demarcations, thus facilitating collective resistance.
Anytime we can verbalize a conviction, it crystallizes it in our mind and gives us the foundation for implementing it with action and with words. So songs and phrases and mottos are means to that end. Now the shortcoming of that is that if we just stop there, we never move to actualizing and bringing to fruition what the word, the motto, the songs are saying. We have to get to the point where we can understand why we have not overcome and deal with those things in terms of concrete proposals, corralled with people who you have convinced of the merit of it, and together we can move another notch forward.